I was at Heroes Con just a few weeks ago. It was an amazing time. And one of the things that they wanted me to do, one of the things the show organizers wanted me to do was do a panel. And so Felix, my art rep, Felix Comic Art, moderated the panel. It went really well. It was super fun. Just never done a panel all by myself before, but it was super great. It was super fun. Thanks to everybody that showed up. And here we go. That's all. Have a good day.
Sweet. Yeah, we're getting started. Yeah. What a crowd. Thanks everyone for joining us.
This is awesome. All by myself, I feel like I really need to say something mind-blowing today.
Well, since the camera's only facing this way, not at the audience, I mean, I just want to say thank you to all 500 of you for all. Woo! Fantastic! What a turnout! Welcome to Saturday with D-Dubs. Great. We got the reference, Dan. Okay, so. Presumably you're all here because you know Daniel, you know his work, you're a fan. So let me ask, can you just keep your hands up? How many of you are reading Transformers?
Oh, everyone.
Okay. How many? Keep them up. And
wait, we have two people in the back here that haven't read Transformers.
That's all right. You can go down. Yeah. I admire you for your honesty.
Okay, keep going.
Do a power bomb.
All right.
Beta Ray Bill. Wonder Woman.
Okay.
Murder Falcon.
Okay.
Extremity. Wow.
Oh, some hands went down.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right, now hands down.
No, it's Space Ball.
Space Mall.
Oh, not a lot.
So, all right. Now, how many hands
coming
down?
back to print though. We're all gonna get the readings.
Yes, true.
How many of you have been following Dan since Extremity? Since Space Mullet? Wow.
That's like 3 people, 4 people.
No. That's a good, I'd say 20% of our 500. Well, thanks for coming. We don't really have an agenda or nothing we want to promote, except I'll mention that this is, I guess, our official announcement.
Yeah, sure.
The Art of Daniel Warren Johnson is coming out hopefully later this year or early 2025. Hardcover art book from our friends at Flesk Publications. I don't know if you know their work. They do amazing stuff. And Dan and I had been talking about, well, actually, I'm a fan. I've been following Dan since Space Mullet. So as a fan, I wanted to see an art book. And Flesk Publications was pretty much #1 on my list. And we approached John Pleskis, the publisher, who, if you look at his books, they tend to focus on classic artists and illustrators, not as much on new artists, and he wasn't totally familiar with Dan's work. But I'd known John for a while. We worked on a Steve Rude art book years and years ago. And once I introduced John to Dan's work, I mean, it was like I could see it, you know, like the proverbial switch getting flipped. And he was immediately all on board. And he's been over to my place, and when Dan's been out there, we've done a lot of scanning and a lot of planning. And for all you guys, whether you've just discovered Dan through Transformers or you go all the way back to Space Mullet, I think you're really going to enjoy this book. This is a cool double-sided postcard. These guys do everything like top notch, and we're gonna sign these. We have like a stack of 500 of them, and we're gonna sign them and hand them out to you at the end of the panel.
Yeah. So
it won't be enough,
right? Just talking about John really fast. So you know, art book, right? Art of. I mean, I haven't been doing this that long, but I've done a fair amount of commissions thanks to Felix, and I've been really proud of a lot of the stuff that I made that doesn't necessarily get seen unless you're like on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. So we're gonna have a bunch of commissions in here, a bunch of published art, like behind the scenes looks. John has been interviewing me a lot over Zoom and transcribing everything, so that's been really great. So there'll be like a lot of text as well. And there's actually, I don't know if people know, I have a lot of sketchbooks at my house. There's about 51 now. From 2006, and John, I came out to see Felix to do some art art stuff in Northern California, where John is also. And he came over and he actually took the sketchbooks for the weekend. Like he had me bring out like maybe 30, took them to his studio, and he actually photographed them with like a camera. Like he didn't even scan them. I was like, why don't you just, ka-chink, wee. He's like, no. It's got to be with a camera. You got a photo. You got to get the lighting all right. So he takes like a fine art approach to sketchbook documentation, which I'm very excited about, and that will also be a big part of the book.
Most likely be a Kickstarter. So again, we'll announce everything as we can as this develops further. But John is already promoting.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're pretty hyped about this.
Speaking of Kickstarter, the Extremity Kickstarter.
Yeah.
How many people backed the Kickstarter? Heck yeah. All right, sweet.
Back the hell out of it.
Yeah. I just got the proofs in the mail from China, and they look amazing, like that physical. I've never gone over a physical proof before. That was really exciting. Everything looks really good. So that's coming soon. It should be on people's doorsteps in October, November.
Yeah, and if all goes well, there could be future editions.
That's a whisper. Yeah, we'll see.
Murder Falcon.
But yeah, take it. Sorry, I interrupted you, Felix.
No. I mean, I think I would start off by saying that we really don't have a specific agenda or anything we need to talk about, or
Right.
So happy to open the floor to any questions. I mean,
Before we open for questions,
Yeah.
I just wanted to shout out a new book that I've just announced. It's called The Moon is Following Us. It's by myself, I'm writing it, and Riley Rossmo is taking on the majority of the art duties. I will say though that Riley is drawing about 85% of the whole series, and I'm drawing about 15% of the whole series. I can't reveal to you why that is, but it is story based. I don't want to give anything away past that. You'll find it all out in issue 1. It's a very personal book. I don't know, there's not a lot to say about it except I'm very, very close with Riley Rossmo. I think he's an incredible artist, and because we have been talking about doing a book at Image for a really long time, and I think it would be fair to say that Riley was ready for a new challenge. He really loved his time on Harley Quinn, all the DC projects really that he did, but he was also ready to start tackling something a little more wild, which The Moon is Following Us definitely is. I'm really excited about it, and I just wanted to shout that out really fast because I'm so pumped.
yeah, I'm not going to give anything away either. I'll try not to, except to say that this is a very different book than you've seen from Dan, and definitely a different book than you've seen from Riley.
That's true.
And I'm not going to compare it in any other way other than to say that it's similar to Saga in the world building, and you've really given Riley just an amazing opportunity to show what he can do. I think you guys are going to love this book. I don't know what else to say. I just read the second issue, and I can't wait for the third. And have they said when the release date's going to be?
September 18th.
September 18th. All right. Mark that down on your calendar.
And also, there were actually a few people coming up to me asking if The Moon is Following Us is the new sci-fi thing that I keep talking about on my Friday stream. That is not the same thing. I'm writing and drawing another science fiction series that is going to be hopefully insane, and that'll come out maybe October, November next year. So I'm working really hard on it as well. There's a lot of irons in the fire, and Space Mullet was someone shouted out Space Mullet 2. That comes out I think in July as a trade paperback over at Image Comics. Very excited about that. It'll be about like 250 pages. It's like $20. There's spot gloss on the cover. It's great. I'm really happy. I don't know what else to say about Space Mold except I'm incredibly embarrassed when I look at it.
No.
We keep speaking cryptically, but I can't help it. So we talked about The Moon is Following Us, and then Dan's own project, which is coming out later after that, and that is his biggest swing yet. So if you thought,
Oh my God.
the other things are like small personal stories compared to what he's got planned.
Oh, it's insane. I'm not trying to play the hits, but this is me playing the hits. So. You know, I feel like there are a lot of people like, is this a chicken? When they'd like hand me Murder Falcon as I'd sign it. This is a chicken? It kind of looks like a chicken. And actually the sales on Murder Falcon were very bad when it first came out. And the sales on Extremity were fine. The sales on Space Mullet were abysmal. I'm not hyping myself up here. The sales on Ghost Fleet were even worse. So, you know, I'm not necessarily trying to make hits or anything, but I'm throwing all of my chips into this basket with this sci-fi thing that's coming later. I know it's coming later. But I have been working on it since 2017. It's been gestating in the sketchbooks, many of them, for many years now. So it's about time, and I just talk about it cryptically all the time on my stream. People are not strangers to that. You know, I've edited out the title that I've said accidentally. You know who you know. But yeah, how many people here watched the Friday with DW stream? Okay, sweet, that's cool. Let me just plug that really fast. I just draw and I don't answer any questions.
I'll just say, speaking, you know, continuing to speak cryptically, this new project, or as if you look at his previous projects, Extremity, Murder Falcon, Dual Powerbomb, I'm talking about his creator-owned project. Those are all self-contained stories, and you can't really imagine anyone else playing in that sandbox. This new thing he's working on, it can be as big as you want it to be.
It's true.
You know, I can definitely see it becoming a thing where, you know, you can have, it is its own property that other creators can also work on. So we'll see.
It's like Meta Barons, but you can have an emotional connection with the characters. I mean, I love Meta Barons. I'm not trying to bring down Meta Barons. I mean, it's one of my favorite books ever. But like, I'm not over here like making connections with like my actual feelings when I read that book. You know, so it's a whale in space. It's amazing. So.
How much time we got? We got
Oh, yeah.
it's 11:12. So
That was
if
riff.
If you guys have been in line yesterday, or actually even at a show with Dan, you know, everyone is great. We really appreciate it. But the line is long, and not everyone gets a chance to really say what they want to say or ask your questions. And I think just take this as the opportunity. You have any questions you want to ask or anything you want to bring up, you know, go ahead. So we'll just get started. Raise your hands if anybody has something to ask. Go ahead, Keith. We know Keith.
So it's like the first time that you've worked with somebody who's drawing what you wrote.
Sure.
Can you like tell us about how that's different, how it's challenging, how it's great?
Yeah. Well, my scripts are pretty loose. You know, they fight. Page 2. They fight more. You know, with Riley, we are, I've said it twice now, but we're really close friends. So there's an element of texting and FaceTiming every day that happens already. So there's this open line of communication, but also I sent him the issue 1 script, and it was so loose that he would call me like every day being like, what exactly did you mean by this? And you know, what does this mean? So I just broke things down just a little bit more. But I try not to be too squishy with I try not to box people in too much with scripts. I've done it for 2 people now, Riley and Jorge Corona on Transformers. And Jorge is doing an incredible job.
He's amazing.
Oh my gosh. He's like an actual, I mean, he could write his own stuff because he's that good at storytelling. But, you know, it's basically, I don't use any sort of, I don't use like Scrivener or any sort of program. It's just Google Docs, and it's just a sentence basically per panel, trying to explain in a clear way what's happening. And if there's any storytelling element that needs to be highlighted, I make sure that I let people know about that. The sword is on the wall and it's very important. Make sure we can see the sword and that kind of thing. And then also I try and get on the phone with Riley and with Jorge sometimes to just like tell them the vibe, or I'll text Jorge a lot, like the vibe of what I'm going for later on. Like, hey, the reason I'm being so anal about this scene is because I have this image in my head of this big thing that's happening at the final bit of this arc, and it's all leading to this point, and I tell Riley the same thing. So I speak out loud to them the vibe, and then I try and just be as clear as I can as possible in the scripts, more clear than I used to be. And then I find myself when I'm writing my own scripts, I'm like typing it all out like it's for somebody else. I'm like, oh wait, I don't need to do this. So I put on a different hat, because so much of what I'm doing is visual. So not a lot of people know this, but when I write scripts for myself or for anyone else, the dialogue is pretty darn set in stone. But the visuals, you know, like a fight scene or whatever, so much of that stuff gets introduced in a visual way as I'm thumbnailing it out, you know. It's just way more fun to have somebody get punched into some sort of wall with a lot of things on it than it is to just have somebody get punched in general. So, but I'm not like thinking that, I'm thinking about emotional beats and like page turns and where are we going from here. It's like kind of like a math, like 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 4. Yeah. And trying to get from point A to point B in a way that makes sense and is hopefully emotional and good, and I'm just trying to transfer that onto the scripts that I write for other people, so, yeah. What's up?
Have you ever been approached by Lucasfilm or Marvel or anyone to do Star Wars, or is that something you consider?
Yeah, so my first offer from Lucasfilm, they wanted me to do a Darth Vader story. I think it was a mini-series or a one-shot, I can't remember.
It's the red, white, and black.
Well, so that was later, this is way before. And they said, yeah, we want you to work on this Darth Vader book. I was like, I'd love to draw a Darth Vader book. And they're like, oh, we already have a writer. I was like, pass, I don't want to. Because that was when I was still trying to really build up the idea of being a writer and artist, you know, that people in the direct market would kind of recognize me for. So it was a tough thing to pass up. But all that to say, with Star Wars, you know, I have been approached a few times, but it's been for stuff that isn't maybe an amazing fit. And then I pitched them a Rogue Squadron book 3 times, and it's always either it's just like kind of yellow light or not really into it.
Can I tell a story about that?
Oh, sure. I don't think there's anything wrong.
Yeah. I started repping Dan with Space Mullet, and obviously he did not have the audience or acclaim that he does now. It's still very, very early on. And from there, he did Ghost Fleet with Donnie Cates, which I really enjoyed. People were starting to take notice of Dan's art. And they didn't know about Dan as a complete creator, but you know, the art was gaining attention. And just off the strength of Ghost Fleet, which, you know, if you compare it to the art now, is actually still pretty early and raw.
Really big foreheads.
You know, he got approached by Marvel for the Darth Vader. It was a mini.
Was it a mini?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I think this is later than Ghost Fleet.
No, this was I remember this very specifically. It's my story, Dan. And you know, look, Space Mullet, Ghost Fleet, they were fine, but it's not like they were setting the world on fire in any way. You know, the book sales were what they were, and then you know, the art sales were what they were, and I really felt like you know, a Star Wars property at Marvel would really help kickstart everything for Dan. And but prior to that, Dan had told me, coming off of Ghost Fleet, that he was determined to write and draw his own comics. Like, he was the only writer he really wanted to work for was himself. It's nothing against the writers, just that, you know, the true creative fulfillment comes in doing it all himself.
Well said.
But still, how do you turn down Darth Vader? But so the point of the story is, I wanted to do Darth Vader. And he said, I have this book, and it wasn't called Extremity at the time, but he was doing character sketches. And I thought, well, you know what, do Darth Vader, get an audience, and then go do this. But he had that much discipline and integrity and belief in himself. He goes, no, I'm gonna not do Darth Vader, I just want to do my thing. And I said, okay, you know, it's your choice. I said, you know, but then Extremity came out, and I said, holy crap, you know, keep going. This thing is great. The art, we're selling out all the art, we're selling complete issues. Why are you ending this? It's done, I've told the story. And I'm thinking, you know, let's keep milking this thing. And he said, okay, so what are you gonna do next? well, I got this idea about a giant bird that plays heavy metal and kicks the demon ass. What's it called? Murder Falcon. And I'm just shaking my head. But it didn't take me long to, like, okay, you know what you're doing, and you have not made any wrong moves. I mean, at the beginning of this, I asked you guys how many of his books you guys have read, right? And if you started early, like one after the other, I mean, yeah, we're all biased, aren't they fantastic? I mean, he's not, there are no misses, they're all hits.
You're blowing me up.
So, yeah.
Well, so let me trade another quick story about that Felix and I, a great interaction we had. So I did a little mini comic in 2015 called Green Leader.
Yeah.
A little ash can, yeah, super fun. Star Wars, get itching, like you said, kind of like not really worrying about IP stuff, just kind of itching the scratch I wanted to itch on. It was a kind of like trying to find my love for drawing comics again after like Alabaster was a bit of a tough project. And so I was working on Green Leader and I was just doing it for fun. Like it was 11 pages. I was just like, I just gotta get this out of my system. I literally Xeroxed it. I stapled it all myself. I invited my friends over for pizza. We made like 200 copies. And it was the talk of C2E2 for 2015, which I did not expect in any way, shape, or form. And it got to be this thing, like really caught fire, and I'd print more at every show, and it would always sell out. People were super excited, Green Leader. And we were at Boston Comic Con that year, 2015, and Felix was like, oh my gosh, Green Leader's such a hit, we gotta do it again. Like, we have to do another book like this. You gotta, like, because we sold the original art complete, I think, and like, it was a nice little boost in my income for like that year. And Felix was like, we should do another mini comic, you know, you bring it to shows, maybe we'll sell some art. I'm like, I know what I'm gonna do. Felix was like, okay, I'm ready, give it to me. I'm gonna do a Deep Space Nine comic about this tiny little character called Martok, son of Boga. And Felix was like, what the F is Martok? And I was like, no, people are gonna love it. He's like, no, people are not gonna love this. Nobody knows who Martok is. Nobody watches Deep Space Nine anymore. And I was like, no, I gotta do it. And Felix goes, look at me. The art, it will not sell. Because it's my art rep, this is his job, right? And I was like, okay, that's fine, you know. And then Martok came out, it was like the next year I had finished it, came out early in 2016 or something. And Felix calls me after about like the first 2 shows I had done. He goes, hey Dan, just wanted to let you know, Martok is not sold.
In fairness, Martok wasn't for sale. You were keeping that one.
No, you were like, you know,
All right, so
paddling it out there, like Martok's out, blah blah blah.
Before everyone gets the idea that I'm just like money grubbing capitalist, I have to weigh it all because, you know, Dan was at a point in his life where he needed to make the art sales.
It's true.
So I'm trying to hustle for him and trying to be strategic about it. But you know, I've learned along the I've learned along the way to trust Dan's instincts. They have not failed him or us yet.
It's true. But the Transformers art.
Shall we talk about that? Okay, so you know, the momentum just keeps building, and I think he's done a great job, whether by design or by accident, in how his career has worked out. So he's done independent creator-owned, he's done Big Two, he's done independent creator-owned, and just, you know, going back and forth and continuing to build that audience. So coming off Duo Powerbomb,
That's right.
I said, well, what's next? And Dan got approached to do Transformers. So, you know, by show of hands, before Dan, how many of you guys cared about Transformers? That's actually more than I expected, you know, 5 people.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Optimus is amazing.
But as a comics, as a lifelong comics reader, as a toy nerd, I didn't give a shit about Transformers. I couldn't care less about Transformers. And to me, it was just, you know, it's a goofy toy property. I mean, who's going to take that seriously? And what I didn't appreciate was that, you know, I was working with the Greta Gerwig of comics. And he says, I want to do Transformers. And you know what, Dan, to be fair, this is like one time where I didn't discourage you. And I actually,
you did not discourage
you know
me
what,
at all.
I encouraged Dan to do them just as a way of getting it out of his system, because I know he is a lifelong Transformers fan. It's something he loves, and if you're a nerd about any of this stuff, like all of us have, you know, come up with our own fanfic and our own fantasies about what these characters can do or whatever. You know, he's been living with this his entire life. I knew those stories were going to be good, but I also did not believe the art would sell.
He
Because
told me that,
yeah, because you know, I'm a lifelong comic book fan. I've been a long time comic art collector, and nobody gives a crap about Transformers art. It's one of those things where if you like it, you would never admit to it. You would never put it, share it in your online gallery, like, oh boy, I've got this goofy Transformers art. And I'll just cut to now where not only is Transformers, you know, highly collectible art-wise, but there is a respect to it. Like, you know, you have people who are fighting over it because it's Dan's art, but now they proudly display it. And there's been this halo effect for other Transformers art. I mean, I think you've done so much for this property. Yeah, it sounds like I'm gassing you up, but even if I'm not your rep, just as a fan, I was old enough when Dark Knight Returns came out, and I kind of made this comparison. People ran with it. And I did not mean to say that, you know, Transformers, because, you know, there is the original art connection because of what I do. You know, for those who don't know, I mean, Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns art is just, it's probably some of the most valuable art around from the past 40 years. And I'm not saying that Dan's Transformers art is ever going to be valuable. I just meant in the sense that Dan took a property that was not respected at all and has completely elevated it overnight. And if you're around when Dark Knight Returns came out, prior to that, I mean, Batman was a really low-selling comic. It was on the verge of being canceled, and it still carried that stigma for 20 years of being associated with the Adam West show, which is considered, you know, jokey, not serious. Nobody really cared about it. And Frank Miller, you know, just changed that perception overnight. And I feel Dan's done the same with Transformers.
You are gassing me up, though.
He is the Greta Gerwig of comics. He's the new Frank Miller.
Let's go to another question right here.
So I had a question that's sort of twofold. I'm a big Gundam fan myself.
Sure.
Your Gundam the 8th fan comic, when do you think that'll be? Like,
I'm sketching it out right now.
that's awesome. The second part of that is, will there be any like Gundam influence in the sci-fi book coming out in 2025?
You know, I don't want to say for sure yes. I would love to have big robots and everything, but I also, if the story calls for it, yes. But honestly, I'm too early in it's too not long enough in the tooth for me to really say yes or no. But I've made sketches of it and I've thought about it.
Okay.
Second here. Let's go here.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the Transformers book again. So when Skybound like approached you about doing it, how much like off the bat did they say you have freedom? Because like you were saying, the Transformers comic was not the greatest one, even at Marvel. You
Sure.
know? But you have like infused it with such like high stakes and murder and death. And I'm like, did they give you a lot of freedom from the get-go, or like how did that go?
It's a great question. And also really quick, I do got to shout out the Marvel comics because when I was growing up in the 90s, my dad and my mom, love them to death, love you guys, you're awesome if you still watch this, but they were very concerned about like sex and violence in those 90s comics, you know, and the big boobs and the blood, blah, blah, blah. And the only thing that was really allowed was like Silver Age, like Superman comics, and you know, I remember I had a Superboy comic that my grandma gave me with the leather jacket. He's like punching a monster, and I thought it was amazing. And my dad was like, "There's too much punching." He took it away. He's like, "Don't worry." I'm like, I was freaking out. Oh, Superboy's got a leather jacket. It's so cool. My dad's like, "Don't worry. I'm gonna get you an awesome comic to replace this." So he goes to the comic book store. He leaves me at home. He goes to the comic book store, fishes through all of the Spider-Man comics. He knew I loved Spider-Man. He found the one copy of Spider-Man where there's not Spider-Man on the cover. He's in like a little photograph. It's J. Jonah Jameson holding up, being like, "I know who you really are." And I don't know which issue of Spider-Man that is. And I was crestfallen, and I told my dad that. I was like, "How could you do this to me?" Anyway, all that to say, we kind of discovered the 80s Transformers comics from Marvel at the same time. And they were in the back issue bins that nobody really cared about because they're from the 80s and it's Transformers comics. But my dad looked at it, he's like, this is appropriate, you can read this. So like at Bedrock Comics in Framingham, Massachusetts, I'm like flipping through and I buy every single one. They were like a few bucks each. And I go to the shop owner, I'm like, okay, when are you gonna get more Transformers comics in? And Jack over at Bedrock is like, what are you talking about, kid? Like, I'm not gonna order more Transformers comics, get out of here. And I was like, but they're so awesome. He's like, this came out years ago, nobody cares about this except you. So I would peruse all the comic book shops around Massachusetts trying to find more Transformers art from those Marvel books. And this is a really nerdy, arty thing, but like I was always obsessed with Optimus Prime, like shooting someone away from the camera, if this makes sense. Like the camera is like behind Optimus, and so he's like pew pew that way. And there's like a few panels in those like first 12 issues where that does happen, and that was an incredible experience. So there's a panel in sorry, this is a tangent. There's a panel in issue 4 where Optimus Prime is about to enter the hospital. He's like, take cover, and he's shooting away. It's a big moment for me, at least. So anyway, back to your question. I apologize for ranting. The freedom element of Hasbro and Skybound. When Skybound originally pitched Hasbro for the license, they had a bit of like a big, outline that they sent, which Hasbro signed off on. So that's kind of what I got, and the outline is like really, really big helicopter view, like way out. So there's these big monumental things that they want to happen in the story, but we're talking like, we're talking issues in tens, not like singles. So there were like little signposts that I had to kind of hit when I first signed on to the book. Like they really wanted Optimus to lose an arm. They kind of wanted like the Autobots to be on the back foot, which I was totally down with, And they wanted Optimus's arm to get like replaced with like Ratchet's arm or like a different Autobot. I was like, well, that doesn't work. But I was like, we'll figure it out, And
Why did you figure it out?
Well, to be fair, I came up with like 3 different versions of Optimus replacing his hand, and Hasbro said no. Like I wanted Optimus to maybe, like, I don't think I would have actually gone with this ultimately, but I was thinking about having Optimus taking Bumblebee's head and using it as a mace. I pitched this to Hasbro and they were like, I don't think this is gonna work. And I was like, what if it's Skywarp's head on like a mace, like, And they said, no, that won't work either. This is a little too like dark for this Transformers book. I was like, oh, okay, fine. And I was thinking about it, and actually, before I came up with the Skywarp's head as a mace on Optimus' arm, I did a sketch of Optimus with the fusion cannon, because I was like, there's no way they'll say yes to this. So I never brought it up. And actually my editor, Sean, over at Skybound was like, hey, what about we use Megatron's fusion cannon? I was like, my dude. And I showed him some pictures of what I had drawn like months ago. And I was like, Hasbro's not gonna say yes to this. And he's like, well, let's just, let's see what they say. And Sean actually is very talented at going back and forth with Hasbro and kind of explaining to the non-comic book people over there about kind of my vibe and kind of the tone that we're going for. Like, it's kind of a story now, but with the deer thing.
Yeah.
Hasbro didn't want Optimus to step on a deer in issue 2, which is like the scene in the first arc and sets up the character for the rest of the series, like long after I'm gone. And I was like, this is gonna go viral on Twitter. Hasbro does not understand. Because Hasbro was like, we don't like the branding of this. It's a little dark, is there gonna be a lot of blood? They're asking these questions that, like, if you really had read any of my comics, you'd know that I wouldn't be treating this as a joke. But, there's people around the table talking about, okay, Optimus steps on a deer, how does this look in the branding? And it took Sean kind of like slow rolling it, being like, hey, this is how we're gonna treat it. And honestly, as soon as they saw my art on issue 2 of Optimus doing that, I think it kind of made sense. Like, everybody's like, oh, and everything kind of clicks, So, there's been some battles that I've had to fight, but for the most part, it's been an awesome experience, and there has been a lot of freedom there. And, and we're on the same page with a lot of things. Like, I remember writing the script where Starscream squishes Dave, and I just didn't clarify that it happens off screen. I was like, Starscream squishes Dave, to be continued. You know, that's how I write my scripts. And Hasbro was like, we need to make sure this happens off screen or off panel, you know. And I was like, of course, like 100%, you know, like I don't want it to be like disgusting. But there is somebody on YouTube who's like making an active body count of all the humans dead. And I think he stopped counting when Soundwave blew up everybody from the aircraft carrier. We're at like 5,000 to 6,000 people at this point, and we're gonna keep going.
When I read Transformers, those first few issues, I just felt like these are all potential storyboards
Oh,
for
sure, yeah.
some kind of adaptation. I mean, look, I was never a Transformers fan, really. I was already a little too old, but I do appreciate those original G1 designs. And to me, if you're going to reintroduce Transformers or make it interesting again, you can't just keep continuing with the Michael Bay thing. I think that's kind of run its course. So if you're going to reboot it, let's just go classic G1. And this would be great. And by the way, like the Optimus with the Megatron cannon arm. I mean, how obvious is that? Like, how has no one ever
I
thought
can't
of that
believe it wasn't done.
before?
I was
But it's
convinced somebody had done it.
Yeah, it's just absolutely amazing. Can you imagine that moment, like in a theater when he shows? I mean, people would just lose their minds. And
We'll see. Next question. Back.
no, actually,
Oh,
this gentleman.
I'm
was
sorry.
next.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
We'll be next.
All right. I know you're a huge AEW fan. We're in the hat. We talked about it before. Would you ever think about doing a comic with them? Like say it's like, all right, we're gonna like graphic novelize, like it's on paper or something, or something like that.
When AEW started in 2019, I was talking with some of the people at Skybound, there's a bunch of wrestling fans at Skybound, or there were at the time, and I was like, we should kind of pitch them on some AEW comics. And he kind of made some connections, and then in C2E2 2020, we actually found their person who was the head of their licensing department at the time. And he definitely didn't really listen to us. Like, he kind of like brushed us off, which is fine, whatever. I don't think he was really taking us seriously. But I was telling him, I was handing him a copy of the Thank You Liger, this little mini comic, and I'm like, I can change your company. Like, I can make wrestling comics incredible for you. Like, we can be on the forefront of something special here. If you give me the ability to take some of your wrestlers and make some stories with them, like, we can change the wrestling/comic world. Then I was at the bar, and me and my buddy from Skybound were kind of bummed. I was like, oh man, it didn't really seem to work out. And we bumped into Christopher Daniels, who is a big comic book fan. I don't know if you guys know who Christopher Daniels is. He's a wrestler, very talented. Best moonsault ever, finishing move, really cool. Great dude. After this guy gave us the, kind of the see ya, Christopher Daniels said, you're that guy who makes the Wonder Woman comic.
I'm going to tell a different story. This is a tangent. I apologize.
That's
but,
fine.
I've just got a million things going on in my head. I got to tell the story. We got a private tour of Pixar, the Pixar campus
Oh, yeah.
in Emeryville, California. And we got to see parts of the offices that most people don't get to see, including where the animators work. And it's so cool. Everyone's office has a theme and is decorated a certain way, and super creative. Like someone did an Indiana Jones theme with the vines and rope nets and the whole thing. It's crazy. And there was one office that was a mini comic shop. It just looked like like someone's own personal comic shop. And so he had all the books spine out on the bookshelf, except he had two face out. One was All-Star Superman, and the other was Wonder Woman Dead Earth. And the guy's working there. We're doing the tour.
He's animating or whatever.
Yeah, and he didn't know that Daniel was there. And anyway, it was pretty exciting.
That was a big moment. I was like,
Yeah.
my book's at Pixar, oh my god. I was nerding out.
Yeah,
more than
and
he
the
was.
others
He was like,
like-
oh man, really nice to meet you. I'm like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, he lost his mind.
And so, and then back to mine, Christopher Daniels then found my comics, and I didn't get to work with AEW, but I did get to meet Christopher Daniels, and I did a t-shirt for him, and that's that story, sorry. Next question, over there, Kirby.
Well, I was making a comment, I'm sure Hasbro's gonna release Optimus with the Megatron armor at some point.
Hasbro, are you gonna release Optimus the Megatron? We'll keep that in the video. Next question. Yeah?
Kirby, if you know where to look, there already is an Optimus with a Megatron, but I can't say anymore.
Yes, well, we can just tell them. It's the YOLO Park figure.
All right.
Oh, we'll get really nerdy. YOLO Park is an Optimus Prime figure. It's like a third-party figure. If you buy the YOLO Park Optimus Prime, and if you buy the YOLO Park Megatron, you can swap their arms.
If you follow me on Instagram, at Felix Comic Art, I posted a picture of it. They're promoting it that way, and they recreated the panel, the first appearance of the. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Next question. Yeah.
What would you want?
Okay. So you mentioned how you first kind of scouted Dan for your art rep stuff. What is it that makes you look at an artist and go, this is someone who I want to work with?
Well, I'll answer that generally, but also specifically to Dan.
Yes.
So in a general, the most general sense is that it's someone's art that I personally enjoy and would want to collect for myself as an art collector. But then specific to Dan, I first encountered Dan on DeviantArt because you remember DeviantArt? So I was basically scouting DeviantArt for young talent. I was just starting out. Nobody knew who I was, except for art collectors. But unless an artist was an art collector, they wouldn't know. The one guy who did know was Nick Patera, who's the very first artist I worked with because he happened to be an art collector.
Keep saying nice things about me. I have to pee so bad.
I go like 2 minutes.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, don't edit that part out. So I came across Dan's work, and it wasn't great. It was really, really raw and rough, but there was something fascinating about it. And from DeviantArt, I got introduced to Space Mullet, and I read through Space Mullet, and there wasn't anything on the surface immediately that would say, pick up this guy. But what I was impressed by was, if you guys followed him early on, like back in those days, he put out a page, the equivalent of like, say, a Sunday strip, every week, without fail. And I went back to the beginning, and I could see this progression, like this. He was getting better because he was working at it. And I think this guy was just putting it out there because he needed to put it out there, because he had to create. I don't think there was a real audience for it. I don't think he was getting any feedback encouraging him to keep putting this out. I think this was all coming from within him. So I was fascinated enough to reach out to him and have a conversation. And believe it or not, I'm the one who sort of took that chance on Dan. And I will just admit to you right now that I in no way could foresee where Dan would be 10 years later. But what drew me to him, wasn't the art, which again was super rough. It was his passion and his drive. And you could tell this guy just was working hard to get better and better and better. So roll the dice, see where this goes. And I fucking hit the jackpot. Yeah, I mean,
all right.
he's like, I'm honestly like proud, I'd like to say that, I had that foresight, and I can tell the future. But, you know, I just saw something there, and look, it's bananas. I don't know what else to say.
It's been a good time. Any other questions, Jermaine?
What are some comics you think people in this room should look for on the convention floor after this?
Oh, jeez.
No pressure.
Yes, for real. Okay, hold on. Yeah, you're catching me off guard here. I haven't barely looked at the floor. I've been so busy.
Back issue bins.
Oh, back issue bins. Okay, hold on.
Stuff you think that we should get.
Oh, shit, you know, Dan,
Both of you.
we're creating competition for ourselves. I'll say something. Now we went on a hunt for, last month in Chicago at C2E2. We didn't actually exhibit at C2E2, but we went there just to hang out, and we actually got to walk the floor and do the bin hunting. And one thing that, if you listen to my podcast, you've probably heard the name Lambert. He's our buddy, and he helps us out at shows. Lambert and I are big Michael Golden fans.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah, and he is too. But Dan hadn't seen what is probably, you know, Michael Golden's peak work. I mean, like, if you were to have one example of his work that you could introduce to someone and say, this is why Michael Golden's great, it would be a single issue that he did, Doctor Strange 55. There you go. Now you guys know. So we were hunting for Doctor Strange 55, and if you guys can go look for it on the floor today. Yeah, Doctor Strange 55.
Also, the Nam issue 9, if we're going to talk about Golden, like, it's kind of a one and done kind of, I mean, the Nam, how many people here read the Nam? Oh man, it's really, really good. Like, the first 9-10 issues are done by Golden. After that, it's, you know, it's fine. But Michael Golden is in peak form in the Nam, and issue 9 specifically is kind of a little bit of a one-shot, and it's so good. It's one of my favorite comics of all time. And don't buy the reprints of the Nam. Go get the single issues, because the reprints are terrible. You know, they're glossy and.
Michael Golden was doing manga before manga.
That's
I mean,
true.
I'm not talking necessarily the storytelling, but the aesthetics. If you look at his work, and what I love about his work is that all the real world stuff is like super grounded, super exact, super precise, and you know, I'm not a gun fetishist, but he nails that hardware. And so when you have like G.I. Joe or the Nam, like a Huey helicopter or an M60 or whatever, it's like, it's exact. But the human faces are like so cartoony and expressive, and he's able to marry those two sort of disparate, you know, things like perfectly. And I
love it.
Yeah, love it.
Yep. Also, I just feel like, so if we're talking about kind of that DeviantArt, the DeviantArt days of kind of the past, a lot of people know this, so I'm sorry if you've heard it before, but I was a middle school art teacher for a while in Chicago, and it was a bad time, and my wife was kind of witnessed my descent into oblivion because of my job was just killing me. And I was just feeling a little bit lost with my art at the time. This is like 2010, 2011, at this late 2010, all through 2011. And it was at this time that I actually discovered an artist named James Herron. He was working on BPRD stuff with Mignola and Arcudi, doing things like The Devil Does Not Jest. It's a 2-issue series about Johan from the BPRD, the frog guy. And I read The Devil Does Not Jest issue 1, and it changed my life. It changed my life. I don't remember when it came out, 2010, 2011. I'm not sure, but I was not really seeing an American artist doing this kind of dynamic work in published comics. Like, I was like, he must be getting paid something for this. And I was like, I want to do this. And you know, James is a peer. I mean, he's maybe a few months older than me, a year or so. So it's not like, you know, it was like like looking at Golden's work and being inspired. But I have to give him credit, because if it wasn't for James, I really wouldn't be here.
Okay, Ken, I'm just gonna say that you giving James credit was something else that caught my attention.
Oh, yeah.
And elevated you in my eyes, in the sense that, you know, how many of you guys know who James Herron is? Great, because he's another artist I rep. And James is probably the most influential comic book artist of the last 25 years.
Agreed.
Yeah, and probably the most imitated. And he's inspired his entire school of people who want to draw like him. But very few will admit to it, you know. And Dan just openly talks about it, you know. So.
Well, when I first started, I think there was a lot of imitation. I think I've grown away from it.
Oh yeah. Not to
made
say
my own
that
style.
you're an imitator, but that you would praise a peer.
Yeah.
Or you would talk about their influence on your work. Whereas most of there are a lot of James Herron imitators out there who pretend like they never saw James' work, which is just fucking ridiculous. Sorry, you can edit all that.
It's fine. I just gotta shout them out, because if you can find some of those back issues, like The Devil Does Not Just stuff, when you look at those, you're looking at the fuel that kind of powered my first years into comics and got me excited about drawing stories again. So there's a lot of people that I gotta give credit to, like Golden, Jeff Smith, Scotty Young, James Herron and everybody, but James was a lot of that first initial spark. So thank you, James, too, and look for his stuff as well.
Well, if you guys have noticed, more and more artists are writing for themselves. They're
That's
doing
true.
it all. And I'll give you credit for that, Dan. I think a lot of people have.
Oh, I'll take credit for that all day.
Yeah. I think people have seen what you've done and it's inspired them. So yeah.
I'll tell James. Can I tell it? Tell a quick James story. I don't think you mind me
Go
sharing
ahead.
this. We were in Japan together in 2015, and I was like the teeny bopper on this Japan trip. I really hadn't much to my name. I had worked on Ghost Fleet and Space Mullet and Alabaster, which is, and I was working on Extremity at the time. I wrote issue 1 of Extremity on the plane ride over to Japan in August 2015, and we were taking a bus from the airport to our hotel, and I was just randomly sitting next to James, and he's like, "So you write for yourself, huh?" Because we had just met, really, that year. And I was like, "Yep, it's really fun." He's like, "I've always wanted to do that." I was like, "You should do it. You should do it. You should do it. You should do it. It's easy." And he's like, "I don't know. It seems like it's kind of intimidating." I'm like, "Just make it simple. It doesn't have, your art is sexy enough that you could write the most simplest story that's been done a million times over, and people would still come in droves to see it." And he's like, "Oh, maybe." I'm like, do it. And I connected him with Skybound, which is where Ultra Mega came out. Which he is writing and drawing. I'm taking credit for that one.
Whereas, before it was all one way, now it's two ways, right? It's like a cross-cultural exchange. So,
And
everyone's benefited.
Anytime I meet an artist that I really like, I'm like, just write it yourself. Sorry, writers. Love you guys.
I think we really ought to wrap this up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're just about done. Any
Take one more
last
question.
minute questions? Okay. Yes.
So some of my favorite stuff you've done is like Sketchtober.
Yeah.
Is any of that gonna be in the art book? I like the Rocktober one was my favorite. I'm still salty about losing Kurt Cobain in that object.
This is a picture of Jimi Hendrix from Rocktober that I did. This will be in the art book as well. A lot of the Inktober stuff will be in there. A whole bunch of the wrestling sketches. We're running into a little bit of what do we do here with the kind of licensed stuff and all the commission work, because Batman getting strangled by Catwoman is not necessarily something that DC wants out for the printed page. Sorry about that one, but yeah, the Rocktober stuff will be in there. I think that's it. Thanks so much for coming, guys. You're the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If you want,
Coming up.